books, why he isn't here. Yeah, they try to take my freedom, but I took it back. I spent 60.95 and the book was black. It's a great read for those of you who never read it. In the back, clock started back in 37. And you can say a lot of things, but it's absurd that the term slavery became a cuss word. And to my mom, I hope you proud, it was all clean. I'm America's offspring, it's all me.
Hey!
As we get brought up, not fond of being kidnapped and found up, found and bound. They come here to work, feel century tags. And we work for y'all still. We live and we try to fight stereotypes. I'm supposed to be polite and bleed stars and stripes. But as I'm sitting here reminiscing on past pain, I found this question: who can tell me my last name? America.
Hey, Aaron.
Well, welcome back to the DAS Today Network. Once again, I am your host, Aaron, and we are joined again by the Prime Minister of the American Slave Nation, Dr. Gerald Higginbotham. How you doing, Doc?
Awesome +1, my brother. I am so excited. You know, every time I hear the American Slave Nation anthem, it really does something for me. It really gets me in that jovial mood, because we own this country, my brother. We own this country being descendants of American slaves. And as the American Slave Nation, man, we got to have our own anthem. I'm throwing it back at you, my brother.
Well, I agree with you. And today is going to be an exciting episode. We are going to go over the mission and vision of the organization of the American Slaving Corporation. So the American Slave Nation understands the platform in which, the business platform in which the American Slave Nation will stand on. And so it's important that, you know, our audience, our viewers, and certainly our members understand our mission and vision. So, Cap, bring us up to speed on the mission and vision concerning the American Slaving Corporation.
Well, the vision is simply to create a society which honors the accomplishment, recognize the spirit, and uplift the image of American slaves. A society that will explain to the descendants of slaves the advantage of them accepting their true identity and then releasing them to truly seek economic emancipation in mainstream America. And the mission to educate, to empower, and enlighten America on the plight and the promises of the descendants of American slaves, whilst creating strategies to identify their true emancipation from government dependency. And we need to be disconnected from the government.
Yeah,
we need interdependency, my brother.
Absolutely. There's a lot going on in the nation called the United States. And we're right now dealing with the coronavirus and the effects of it and the planning or the lack thereof of the leadership of this nation. And, we need help. We need to help one another. We're certainly about peace, but I believe we have the answer, like you're saying. We are original descendants of American slaves, and we've came here and brought value to this country and company. And so let's get into it then. We want to have a healthy, intelligent discussion for our viewers about first the vision. I mean, because there's a lot in there. There's a lot in the vision, and we want to be able to articulate that vision clearly. So if you were to pick 3 things out of the vision, where would you start?
I first start off with us being Americans, not African Americans, but Americans, descendants of slaves. America bred slaves in this society. on those 7 southern states and to build this great nation. And so we have birthrights. And that's one of the first thing that we want to get. And the second thing, we got to begin to ask the question, are we truly free? I believe that this week here, Brother Aaron, the federal government, United States of American federal government, created permanent underclass citizens. They just created $2.5 trillion, the biggest in the history of America. Now I got a question. Somebody got to pay that back. Who did you have in mind? Is it you, my brother?
No, it's not. It's not me. But you know, it was me. It was me before I joined the American slave nation, and so now it will not be coming from me. And the United States of America has a history of creating inflation and debt, and having that repaid by the lower social economic class. That's how they create oppression. That's how they oppress the people. And so you're right. You're absolutely right. It comes down to identity, which is why we've been consistent with the U.S. Census theme this year and getting people to understand that you're not on the U.S. Census at this point. You may not be on the U.S. Census. And I've always wondered where I was when I filled out a job application, or when, or some of the other numerous things that you do, W-4s, W-2s, I-9s, those legal things that you have to do as an employer or an employee. And I never felt comfortable with marking anything because I never saw myself on there. But of course, I checked what most of us did, which was Black or African American, because what else could you choose? Now that I have connected myself with a group of intelligent brothers and sisters who understand the Constitution, I now see what races are spoken in the Constitution, and I understand that I'm American slave. So I won't be paying it back. So what's your second pick out of the vision?
My second pick is to recognize the spirit, because our spirits has been held down. When they took, and I'm going there tonight, the 14th Amendment really took away our God-given freedom rights, our natural birthrights, and made us American slaves through the 14th Amendment. And that's a contract, and an implied contract that was set up by the bankers, international bankers, who created the Federal United States of America, a British nonprofit corporation, because they wanted to control America. This information is known, but it's not taught. And generations are not learning this. And see, I just came on the scene, and my mom signed the birth certificate, and it turned me over to the state. My labor, my time, my talent, and my treasure, because they taxed me very hard. And I didn't know that. But you know what I love? In the United Nations, it says, and this is United Nations, and it's 220. Once you become of age, meaning once you become wise, if you don't like the nation in which you were birthed in, you have the right to divorce it. I read that, I was like, say what? Our people really need to know our rights from the law of nation perspective. We don't have to put up with this. And we weren't part of the contract of those 55, our white founders that founded America. Many of them had slaves. It wasn't about African slaves. It wasn't about African American, because they weren't even around then. It wasn't about black or white. It was about those 55 guys who signed that contract and their prosperity and for their family. And then they built a whole government system around it, the Republican government, around that contract, the Declaration of Independence. And then the interesting thing is when the 7 southern states that had the slaves that walked out because they didn't want to give up the slaves, they free labor. Because the North saw that the South had an unfair advantage. And when those 7 states walked out, United States of a republic, it went away. And for 10 years, most folks don't know this, for 10 years, this country operated as a totalitarian society. And then the federal government came in place in 1871, February 1871, and it's what we have to this day. These con men, they were businessmen. The international bankers wanted to get control of the United States. The international bankers, the British bankers, because Great Britain was here before them. I'm talking about the Rothschilds, the Carnegies, Macmillans, the Vindenbergers, the 6 most powerful bankers. They wanted back control of the United States, and the Republic of the United States was out of business. But the quasi-government, they needed money. They were broke after the Civil War. And so the bankers lent them money, but they set up a new corporation. I mean, they set up a state in DC, and it's been controlling ever since. But most people don't know this information. But the law of nation, once you really become informed and empowered, you're like, it's on and popping. And that's why I'm so glad that having that knowledge, we've set up the American slave nation according to international laws and the law of nation. The Indians have the nation. Why can't the American slave nation have a nation? In that US Constitution, there's only, and you're right, it's only 2 races of people in there. And that it was slaves and Indians. But our people was ignorant. They were operated in fear because they didn't want them to read. Back then, they killed them, hung them up, strung them up, murdered them. And so our culture has never moved forward. And it's sad because that's one of the reasons why we're in the condition that it is in. Because slavery was the foundation of this nation. And this country got a crack in its foundation. That's why we're suffering right now. But the good news is the American slave nation is in place. I'm going to throw this out there too, because since I'm talking, America owes the American slave nation $105 trillion at least.
Oh, okay. So wait a minute now. We need to get back to that. You just dropped the bomb, but I kind of want to stick with the agenda. You know how hard, our fans are.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drop that little Scud missile.
No, don't worry about that because I don't even have to write that down. We're gonna get back to that. So your top 2 were image, which I understand, and spirit, and identity and spirit, which I certainly understand because the means in which we were treated certainly can break a spirit.
Absolutely.
And I understand why it's important to rebuild the human spirit from that standpoint. And you use identity to do that. I'm tracking with you. Okay, and your third, what is your third?
We have to renew our minds. The mind is made up of your soul. We have to renew our soul. Your soul is made up of your mind, will, imagination, motion, and intellect. Even God says in Romans 12:1-2, don't be conformed to this world, meaning don't you think like these knuckleheads down here, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove that good, perfect, and acceptable will of God. It is your responsibility to renew your mind. But nobody taught us about the law of mind. And if you don't know the law of mind, you can't renew your mind. It's impossible. Or you can haphazardly learn, but that's what we've been doing. Dr. King will have been gone here 52 years here on April the 4th. He was the leader. He was telling them the next battle for them was going to be out at the economic battlefield. But look at our people. Look at our group. We're still we have been regulated to the lowest level of American society. We've been locked into the lowest level of a real life monopoly game. And you cannot get out of that system using the same old methods that we've been trying. And so we're going to have to change. The good news is, I'll just throw this out here, we have shifted from an industrial-based society to the information age. It's a
okay. There you go.
Sorry.
There you
I'm
go.
sorry.
There you go.
Sorry.
You done slipped another one in on me.
I'm sorry. I'm pulling the throttles back. I got to come down.
Okay.
I got to come down to 1,000 feet and hang out with the folk because they ain't ready for that one.
No. We want to go there. When we're gonna park that in the parking lot too. Okay. The information age.
All right.
I don't need to write that one down either. But as I digest what you stated in terms of the vision for the American Slave Incorporation, three major components of the vision would be identity, would be the spirit, and would be renewing your soul, which is your mind, will, intellect, emotion, and yes, and this is all vital because this is really unique for that vision to be in a business model. And we'll get to that too, but I think the foundation, and we understand it's a 501c3, but I think it's very, very important that the vision and the foundation is as solid as Dr. Norris Shelton has placed it, because I feel like that foundation that business foundation is strong enough to hold the American slave nation. So that's excellent. Okay, no, so now we're gonna get to the mission, and then we're gonna go back to the parking lot. So the mission statement, and actually I want to read it to you, and then I want you to kind of give your synopsis, if you will, on the mission.
Absolutely.
Okay, the mission statement for the American Slave Incorporation. This is the 501c3 business platform. The mission statement is to educate, empower, and enlighten America on the plight and promise of descendants of American slaves, while creating strategies to identify true emancipation from government dependency. And I have a feeling that the two things you mentioned in the vision, the $105 trillion and the information age, are somewhere a part of this mission statement. Could you break that down for us?
Well, you know what? Let's do this here. Since you went there, let's break down every word of that mission. To educate. That means to become informed. But in order for that, we're going to have to learn, unlearn, and relearn. By the way, that's the definition of the illiterate, misinformed, uninformed of the 21st century. We have to we got to get more information. The second word is empowered. The word empowered means the ability and the opportunity to influence decisions that affect your life from a social, political, and economic point of view. The word is enlightened. That means to be made aware of. It means to see it from a different perspective. And I'm talking about here in America, no place else right now. Because before we can go clean up someone else's backyard, we got to clean up our own. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
And so we have to talk about our plight. Because you can be born into a situation and become so comfortable with it, and you can live your whole life in that. It's just like if you take a frog and put it in water and turn the water all the way up to hot. That frog will stay in there and will not jump out. It will die, because that's all it's known. And that's where we are. We have to address our plight right now. We're in the survival mode. It's time for us to wake up. But if you take a frog and throw it in hot water, that frog will jump right back out. So we got to deal and understand our plight, where we are. We're in poverty, ignorant, we've been dependent, and we've been complacent, powerless. That's our plight. But we got to talk about the promises. See, God said that the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. And the last culture that has been introduced to his human family is the American slave culture. And so we own America because we have firstborn rights. It's how we've been looking at it has been the issue. Yeah, that 105 trillion, descendants of slaves are not poor. They just broke. Broke is temporary. But poverty is forever. And so we have to wake up. We have to identify our identity. Everybody has come to America except the American slave culture and have not been properly placed in America's pecking order because we have not been properly identified. That's a leadership problem. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And so we have to address that, because it's the tax dollars. And I'm going there. Every tax dollar here in America technically belong to the American slave culture. Why you say that, Captain Dr. G? Prime Minister? Well, the reason why I say that was slavery was the foundation of America. And every business in this country has been put on top of the American slaves' foundation. Every tax dollar. I hope this get out to everybody, because every tax dollar, it belongs to you. And everybody has been taking what really has belonged to our culture, because we have not been put in our proper place because of misidentity. And so we need some new strategies that will create freedom. Freedom comes to having ownership of land, labor, and capital, because that puts you in control of the production, distributions of goods and services. And it is exchange of the dollars through business ownership is how wealth is created. The reason why we don't have no wealth because we don't own nothing or produce anything. So we have to deal with that, because we want to get off government dependency. We must get off, because we depend on the government for food, shelter, clothing, housing. And anytime you depend on something for so long, you become a slave. They keep you like that. But it's time for us to wake up, come together, unified in a way that we become educated, empowered, enlightened about the promises that really belongs to the American slave culture. Oh man, I know you probably didn't want to hear the whole thing, but when we do the mission, the vision's gonna come to pass. Because see, our issue has been, it's been said, where there's no vision, the people perish. And so we've been in a perishing state because we have not had a solid, concrete vision. But once again, we're back to leadership. And I'm so thankful for connecting with Dr. Norris Shelton and him putting this piece in place, because he did it for us. He's ready to cross back over. It's our turn and time to execute this thing. That's why I'm excited about what we're doing, because see, the word of God is clear. It says, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, there he is in the middle. Whatever that we touch and agree upon, it shall, not might, not maybe, it shall come to pass. And so we're in agreement. And when you get God with you, all things become possible. He said, without faith, it's impossible. But when you have faith, he said, if you got the seed, the faith of a mustard seed. And I got a little mustard. Where my little mustard seed at? I got it on my desk, Aaron. Oh, here they are.
Oh, you can hang it up for trying to find that on you.
Oh, no.
Oh, you got it in.
I got them in a little package. They are. He said, if you have this faith, this much, you can say to the mountain, be thou removed, and it has to go. Now we're talking from a spiritual perspective. But see, faith is simply acting on what you believe. And if you believe the word and you act on it, all things become possible to him that believeth. And so this is about a movement. See, this is God's movement. It's not my movement. I just have found my purpose, why I was created. Because he told us to take up dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowls of the air, over the cattle, and over all the earth. Not some, he said all. So we have to have that mindset, and we got to be willing and obedient to do it. Because the moment you be willing and obedient, he brings the things in your life so they can come to pass.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for, yeah. I had to jump in there.
Hey, so I'm tag team. Go on, jump in.
Well, we want to just keep moving along, because we want to have clips that people feel comfortable with watching, that aren't too long but aren't too short. And so we covered the vision. It's important that there is a vision. Like you said, the word states, without a vision, people perish. So we don't need no one perishing this time. No. We got the mission statement, which talks about identity, which talks about, our ability to actually enter into the game of mainstream America because we know who we are. And actually having a business foundation and platform to springboard off of and for other people to sow seed into, it only makes sense. As you stated, and thank you for bringing that up. As you stated, this is building a link to true emancipation. And I think that everyone is looking for that. But I want to bring up a statement that you made that I feel is pertinent to the discussion. You distinctively said that this is God's movement. And I want to note that just because it's not the civil rights movement, and they're distinctively different, even though they're the same race and the same people. Can you explain the difference between the two? And I know that you weren't prepared for this, but so we're into the discussion phase right now. We've covered the vision, we've covered the mission. You made some statements and some things that have enriched us this evening. So what is the difference, if you could expand, between the civil rights movement and God's movement?
Oh, well, the civil rights mean anytime somebody say rights, somebody has to grant them to you. And if somebody can grant something to you, they can also take it away from you. And see, God's right, he said equal status. In his eyes, we are all have been seen as equal. But here's been the issue. In America, we have never have been seen equal to the society that created the American slave culture. And so reconciliation, I hear this all the time about, oh, we need to reconcile. Let me break that down to you. Because reconcile is not what we need. What we need is restoration. They're two different things. See, if you were married, man and wife, legally, man and wife, I'll say that again, man and wife, not Adam and Steve, but Adam and Eve, in God's eyesight. You got married, and for some reason, you guys had some irreconcilable differences. You guys departed and went separate ways. And over a period of time, you guys want to come back together. Well, reconciliation is in order, because you were seen as equal in his eyesight. But we have never been seen as equal, according to the society that created the American slaves culture. So that culture has to be restored back to its rightful position as human beings, not 3/5, but human beings. And God said,
Absolutely.
the last shall be first. I didn't say that. I've just gotten wind of the creator who created the heavens and the earth. He gave this earth here for man to have dominion over. And man has jacked it up. That's why our country's jacked up, because we have a leadership problem. Everything rises and falls on leadership. America and its leaders have lost their moral vision. And a nation that's not governed by morality is a nation that's headed for an abyss. And that's exactly where we are, in a dark hole, and they don't know how to get out. And I don't care how much money that you throw at it. It's not going to help you. I'm just keeping it.
So since, we need you.
I'm high-fiving it back at you.
We need to keep it 100, so I'm glad you're doing that. And I assume when you say that restoration has to take place, this is where your $105 trillion comes into play. Could you expand on that?
Absolutely. You see, anytime you hurt someone, hurt a culture, you have to, reparation is in order. See, they have violated, a crime against humanity, a crime against a culture has been committed. And let me tell you about the laws of nature, the laws of God. Just because our forefathers, because I'm a descendant of slaves, American slaves, and my other brothers and sisters who are alive today, they're descendants of slave masters. A crime was committed. A debt is still owed. Now, no, you didn't do it if you're living today, but your ancestors did, and you have benefited by it. You have a moral responsibility. We have a moral responsibility to correct this thing, because we have to live together. We can never be divorced, because we're all Americans, and slavery was the foundation. And therefore, I hope I've answered your question, that The laws were broken, and America is out of balance right now. Its political system, its social system, its economic system, its business system have all crashed. And when a nation is out of balance, you experience what we're having today.
Well, I would agree. I think, out of balance is certainly a way of articulating that. And yes, you did answer the question, because again, you want to restore back, or you would want a nation to restore its most valuable piece back to a state in which it can be, as it's written in the mission statement and the vision statement, a true emancipation from the government. So we're not dependent upon it. But yet it seems as if America has painted a picture and created a system that has kept that very race oppressed and kept them dependent upon the government, and then tried to make it that race's problem, make it their issue, make it seem as if it's their fault. And so for the viewers out here, I'd like to share with them what $105 trillion means. Let me share with you what that means.
What does that really mean? Tell me.
Let me share with you what that means. What I did was I did some research, and I know that yourself and Dr. Shelton had mentioned the original 21 million descendants of American slaves. Again, 21 million descendants of American slaves in this nation. That's well, right. Where $105 trillion comes in is that each individual member of that 21 million race, descendants of American slaves, each member would get $5 million. That's what that means. And oh, by the way, $105 trillion is the least that we would accept. That's certainly not counting all of our contribution and all of the benefits that the Caucasian race has achieved off of our labor. It's nowhere close to what the number actually should be, but yet it is a number that has the ability to be impactful, will give 21 million descendants of American slaves an opportunity to have the capital to build your dreams. But even more importantly than that, I feel it's been strategic from a government standpoint to keep us broke, because they've seen what we've achieved under such dismal circumstances. We had nothing. It's interesting, the things that the slave master thought was trash in terms of what was being utilized from an animal, for the lack of better terms, when it's time to eat. But yet nowadays, it's a delicacy to eat the very things that we were eating because they thought it was trash off of their table. We took what they thought was trash, made it into treasure, and if you go to your store, local grocery store, and you think about what your grandmothers and your great-grandmothers talked about, what they cooked on the stove and what they had to eat, look at those items in the store now, and be shocked at how much it costs now to get what they thought was scraps or unwanted parts of an animal that we turn into treasure. I think that's a good earmarker. So yeah, again, $105 trillion means 21 million individual descendants of American slaves would get 5 million. Now that takes me right into the United States Census 2020.
Bring it.
Let's talk about the $500 billion that you had mentioned that will be disseminated amongst, and which is key, amongst the races. That's key. Talk to us about that and how you feel that's going up to this point, because we have been sending that message out.
Well, I've had several people send me an email saying, "Hey, Doc, Cap, Prime Minister, I did it online. I did exactly what you said to do, and I totally agree. And I've written down American Slave on page 6 or page 7, item 7, box 8. I wrote it in, and so we are making headways. What I'm excited about is that if we only have, I know that our people are still stuck on being African American. They've been programmed, but that's not who we are. But those that are waking up, they're going out and writing their name in American slave. And here's the good news why we want to do that. We want to do it as a group because then we can begin to get the tax dollars. See, the tax dollars belong to us. It doesn't, and see what has happened, African American, these immigrants, they've been trained. They have come over here and got their names on the tax roll, and they've been getting our tax dollars. The tax dollars belong to us. It don't belong to anyone else but to our culture. And so 500 billion has been set aside for the census to divide up among the cultures. And we want to get ours. So we can begin to bring these resources to our communities. So we can do community development and empower our people. So we can open up our culture business incubator. Because the American slave culture is the newest family member that has been added to the family of nation. That's exciting. That's one of the biggest things in our lifetime beside the information age. A new culture was introduced to the family of nation. That's like having a baby. It's a brand new, I'm so excited about that. And I'm excited about being the prime minister because I understand the significance. Because being a member of the body politics, I can help to influence our nation. And even if we got 20,000 people that went and has done it, it's even though it'd be a small number, but we now will have been properly identified and placed in the American pecking order. And then they'll want to deal with us because even if we're a little small number as that, because I saw what they're doing with this. When I was at the I spoke up at the United Nations. I met some lady from one of the islands in the Pacific. She's beautiful, sweetheart, my new sister. I asked her, how many people are in your nation? She said, only 4,000. I said, how many? Oh, just right at 4,000. In my head, I started thinking, I was like, I got 5,000 friends on Facebook. I got 52,000 on my American slavery page. I said, oh, and I got almost 10,000 in the Descendants of American Slave page. So I said, if I can be able to go back and begin to organize us. And that's what the my congressman was over had his hand over the census. He said, I went and argued with him in Washington, at Capitol Hill, about our culture. And he said, I'll run it up the polls. And he did. And he came back and he said, okay, you can write it in. We'll make a spot that you can write it in on page 7, line 7 or line 8, and just write an American slave. But you got to go back and tell the people. I told him, Aaron, I said, why can't you guys it's on computer, just put it on there so people can just.
Yeah, it should be on box 2 is really what it should be, but it shows, unfortunately it shows how they felt about our race. And so they wrote in on box 2, Black or African American. And I would assume even the Native Americans, which is on box 3, are a little disappointed that they weren't on, you know what I mean? But anyway, all that is just paperwork. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, Doc, and that's why we've been driving home the U.S. Census 2020. We've been asking people to go to page 7, box 8, and if this is what I've said to my personal family. When you do the U.S. Census, if you see yourself on there, check a box. But if you don't see yourself on there, go down to box 8 and write in American slave. Because if you were to look at the Constitution, that's all you're going to find in there is American slave and American Indian. And that's why American Indian is in box 3 and has their tribes and their nation behind it. So we are quickly approaching, and we will continue to be repetitious in getting people involved because, hey, let's look at it like this. 500 billion. Let's say the American slave nation gets 50 million. Well, if there's only 5 of us, then we're going to split up $10 million a piece. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, we want everyone to be a part of this. We want everyone to benefit. And that's why we're throwing these numbers out here. But unfortunately, our time is run short on this episode. And we are doing our best to get more and more content out to you. There are a couple themes that we will be consistent with. One is our audience in the American slave nation understanding the mission and the vision of the American Slaving Corporation and why it has to be a business. The other thing is understanding the American slave nation and the descendants of American slaves and how that is set up. We want to be transparent on what we're doing because there's nothing to hide here. What we're doing is legal business. It's already been recognized and established from a federal government and from other nations level. Our flag is flying that is behind you in other nations, in other continents, and people need to know that. Progress has been made. It's time to get aboard. And, you know, I feel like we're getting to a point where we need to identify what dispensation we're in according to the Word of God. We're getting ready to bring in the Bible into this and getting ready to line it up so everybody understands truly what our status is as it relates to how God sees us. Any final comments?
Hey, I'm ready to take us out here on our national anthem, American Slave Nation.
All right, Doc, give me a beat.
Here we go.
Please like, share, and subscribe to the DAS Today Network.
And trip like a rock shuttle with no invitation. Voluntary immigration ain't the situation. Excuse me. And we get proud of, not fond of being kidnapped and bound up, bound and bound. I come here to work, feel century past. How we work for y'all still, we live and we try to fight stereotypes. I'm supposed to be polite and bleed stars and stripes. But as I'm sitting here reminiscing on past pain, I found the question, who can tell me my last name? I'm gonna go.